Travis Wayne Goodsell. In my mom's family, she's the oldest child, and Uncle Rod, for some reason, has bright red hair. Well, he's old now, it's probably all gray, but as I knew him as a child, he had the reddish hair. And yes, it is distinctive from his siblings, even my mom, who has the dark brown hair. And they often, of course, would tease him of being the union of Grandma and the postman. I don't know if the postman was a redhead. Kind of disturbing to have the siblings accuse Grandma of being a slut. But the postman always rings twice. If you know that movie. And so if Rod was going to insist that he's a legitimate member of the family as the offspring, just like his siblings, of both Grandma and Grandpa, he really has no claim other than Grandma and Grandpa's word. They didn't have DNA back then, as they do now. So now he can have his DNA tested and identify himself as who his actual mother and father are, and confirm one way or the other if Grandma and Grandpa are his biological parents. And in which case we could then trace where the red hair mutant gene came from. And yes, we do have a mutant gene in my grandparents' side of the family. I can't remember which one it was. I want to say Grandpa, but I can't remember. I know my grandma's side has the height, which is why I'm mutantly tall. I shouldn't be tall. I shouldn't even have the bluish eyes. That's also a mutant situation. So mutants in my mom's side of the family are common. And so, but without the DNA evidence, there is no way to establish it. Uncle Rod can try to come up with saying that, well, I was born in this location at this hospital where Grandma and Grandpa were also at that hospital, but the siblings can say, well, babies were switched. He could claim that, oh, I speak fluent English, just like Grandma and Grandpa. Well, yeah, because that's all the language you knew. And all sorts of attempts to try to justify that he's a legitimate child of Grandma and Grandpa, when the siblings can just say, well, you're a mutant. You're not one of us. And the same kind of debate has raged with the origins of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As we now have science that is stepping forward, showing that the prophets are false, that they're lying to us and they're deceiving us. Not just that they're wrong, but they're actually evil in their errors as they cover up the lies that they've been telling us. And yet Mormon apologetics has emerged to teach Mormons how to lie and cover up the truth with the argument form called fallacy. A fallacy is an improper communication tool. It's, in essence, where the claims you make, the premises is what they're called, do not lead to the conclusion that you're making. So when the church gets up and says, Jesus Christ is a living God, that already sets up for failure, because if we were going to follow this through with science, we would need to see this God and be able to test him to find out if he is in fact God. And there comes some problems with that, as I'm sure you might be aware. But that hasn't stopped the Mormon Church from the mythological claims that the Jesus Christ of the Gospels is coming for a second coming and will appear to the members of the church. And yet, how much more longer do we have to wait now? Until he comes? Is there not a date that the church has given us by which we may know if he has come or not? That we can test and say, oh, he didn't appear, I guess the church is wrong. It's called Signs in the Heavens. They give precise day and hour dates. And that's another problem, is that with the science of astronomy, all of those signs in the heavens in the scriptures can now be given a date. And oops, there is no second coming, because the date has come and gone. Oops. But wait, Travis, no. It's an 8-year period from 2017 to 2024. 2024 is the sign of his coming. Which God are you referring to here? So again, the Mormons all are claiming that Joseph Smith is a redhead, that the Book of Mormon is a redhead, that Jesus is a redhead, and therefore the church is false. Right? They're all trying to justify the redheaded church. And it doesn't work, because they're not using science that would clear up the matter instantly. They need to do the DNA of Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, and the church, and God, and everything else. And Mormons are not doing it, because a spiritual witness is preventing it. The spiritual witness doctrine is that once you get a sensation through your body, that is the Holy Ghost, and now you know the truth without the need for doing any research, any science, any study. All you did was read, ponder, pray. You got this feeling throughout your body, and now you know. That's a false dichotomy where you can just flip a coin and get the same results. But it helps protect Mormons. It defends them against the truth of science, as Mormons have been taught by the prophets to be science deniers, and in so doing are being taught to be truth deniers. God is the source of truth. Science is the pursuit of truth. And so to deny science, to deny truth, you're denying God. The Mormon religion was all about gaining intelligence. The more light and intelligence you obtain in this earth, it will be better with you in the afterlife. And yet the prophets have gone on an intellectual ban, denying science, as science was now emerging and showing the fraud of the church and all of the claims. And that's what the prophets did. They turned Mormons against this science, against the truth, to cover up their lies. And Mormons fell for it. Although approximately 13 to 14 million have not fallen for it and are no longer involved with the church. They just didn't bother to fill out the form officially canceling their membership and handing it to the bishop with a bishop's interview, as the bishop is supposed to be the last man standing to convince you to stay. And how is he going to do that? He'll have to threaten you. He'll have to put a guilt trip on you. You'll have to say, yeah, well, you aren't going to be supported by the church anymore. Yeah, you weren't supporting us anyway before. What does it matter? You know, are you sending me a death threat now? Is my life in jeopardy? Do I have to worry about my family? And so, fallacies are the argument form to set up a theory test in science. If you're unfamiliar with commercials, if you're lucky enough not to watch them, all commercials use fallacy to trick and deceive you into buying their product. Do you honestly think that sugar bombs is part of a balanced nutritional breakfast? Only your DNA that can handle large amounts of sugar will inform you as to whether you can handle it or not. Otherwise, you're risking your life by being a test subject to find out if a daily dosage of sugar bombs will be bad for your health. For me, I had my DNA tested after a life of being a guinea pig for sugar, and already knew that I could handle sugar in my life. But other people might not. Other people might get diabetes too. And that causes severe health problems. My dad's family, there's some uncles-in-law and an aunt who had diabetes too. My dad even had diabetes too. My DNA says no, I won't. And so that skipped me. But yeah, they lie. All the cigarette commercials, they now are required to warn the audience that smoking is bad for your health. Well, that would have never happened had it not been for the whistleblower who sacrificed his whole life to save Americans, and it didn't really help. All the money from the lawsuit went to the states to do advertising against smoking. And the tobacco industry was now no longer allowed to tailor their commercials for children, as Fred Flintstone used to be a smoker advertiser. If you remember those back in the day. And so, yeah, the science that is being used now are in all areas of science, because the Book of Mormon makes a lot of claims, as well as the Smiths. And the biggest one is we have no plates. And that missing plates theory is the same theory that John Dee uses for the Book of Abraham, as to why Joseph Smith is not a translator of the Book of Abraham. And he claims, well, there's missing parts to the papyri, and therefore those missing parts would have been translated by Egyptologists in the exact same manner that Joseph Smith did. Even the part where he copies from the Bible, chapter 2, for example, plagiarized from the Genesis account. So chapter 1 was new stuff. He then put stuff already in Genesis. Then chapter 3, new stuff. He's now going on to facsimile number 2 now. He's already talked about facsimile number 1 in chapter number 1. And then he put in how it ties into the Genesis narrative. And then now he's doing some extra stuff now about facsimile number 2, the hypocephalus. And then he goes and talks about the creation, but never gets to facsimile number 3. He doesn't finish. It's too bad we don't have a translator in the church who could translate it for us, right? Nelson, white supremacist, let God prevail. I couldn't believe that. Saw Chris Hayes, and he was quoting the Southern line of let the South prevail. Oh my God, I lost it. I lost it, because we just had conference where he doubled down. Let God prevail in your lives. If you take this one interpretation of Israel into your life. See, again, translation is a science. And yes, Egyptologists are claiming Joseph Smith did not translate the Book of Abraham. And yet here I am going, yeah, but Egyptologists are not translating Egyptian petroglyphs. I deciphered them. Guess what? Yeah, he does know how to translate Egyptian, just not the text. He had to learn biblical Hebrew in order for him to make his retranslation of the biblical Hebrew text in the King Follett Discourse. He had to learn to be a translator. And the church isn't teaching this concept. As Nelson, he didn't learn Hebrew. He asked Hebrew scholars, and they gave him a way to be a white supremacist and hide it from the Mormons with the code, let God prevail. And so the author of the Book of Mormon, linguistic scholarship, a science, and they even got a computer to fact check them. Sidney Rigdon has the major footprint, fingerprint, whatever print, in the Book of Mormon. And it's not, it's distinguishable from the books that were plagiarized in the Book of Mormon. And so the questions that Mormons refuse to ask are why and how. They're not accepting the facts, the truth, the science. They've been taught to deny it. And so they come up with all the lists of fallacies. Well, my map match confirms the Book of Mormon is true. No, it doesn't. No. Well, we found horses buried in North America. Proves the Book of Mormon is true. No. We found Lehi in the Bible. We found Nephi in the Apocrypha. Proves the Book of Mormon true. No. We found Alma as a male name. Proves the Book of Mormon true. No. You need plates to prove the Book of Mormon true, and we don't have them. And so now we use science to identify the author, and the author is Signe Rigdon for the majority. The opening rewrite, nobody knows. I know, I've been telling you, it's Smith Sr. He got pissed with Joseph, and you read about it in chapter or section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants. It's not the Lord. Remember, the Doctrine and Covenants is coded. And so if the Doctrine and Covenants is coded, and the church service missionaries in 1981 missed some, guess what? Maybe they know code? Maybe other things are coded that aren't real? Which is why they're not real. It's because they're coded. So Joseph Smith history. Are we sure those things happened? Because apparently not. Coded. The Book of Mormon did not happen. It's not a real history. Doesn't matter if you've got a map match. It doesn't matter if you consider plagiarism as proof of its truth. Consistencies. That doesn't prove the Book of Mormon true, because there are a number of other explanations. That's what a courtroom does. They have to show beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. And if they can't do it, if the defense can give some other explanation, defendant goes free. If the glove doesn't fit, you must hang. Yeah, I mean, OJ. We all know he did it. Nonetheless, it didn't help when he came out with a book afterward. If I had done it, this is how I would have done it. And so, yeah, he got busted for breaking into a fan's house and trying to take back his property, memorabilia stuff that he claims was now his, and locked him up, and he's been recently freed. But science, guys, you can't deny science. You can't allow fallacy to deny science, to deny logic. You know, if you just say the Book of Mormon is true, I had a spiritual witness, that doesn't lead to the conclusion that the Book of Mormon is true. You've got nothing to show for it. You get what you get when you go for it, and I'm ready to take a chance again, ready to put my love on the line for you. Breaking out into song. Barry Manilow. So, it's a hopeless situation for you, Mormons. The church is false, and no spiritual witness in the world can save it. And it's causing harm. We just went through, we're still going through President Nelson causing the spread and escalation of coronavirus. As you all know somebody now who's gotten sick and possibly even died. That's on Nelson. This is the danger of a false prophet. It's not just deception, it's murder. And Nelson's in denial. You heard him in conference. Oh, it's a real tragedy, this coronavirus. Oh, but, be grateful. And the healing power of Jesus. He's still in denial. He's telling you to heal yourself when you're the one sick, in need of a physician. Do you not remember that scripture? Physician, heal thyself. The well need no physician. So, it's sickening that Mormons don't see it, or they don't want to see it because they're in shock and causing the denial syndrome and using fallacies and just outright denying. No, it's not true. No, spiritual witness. It's a sandy foundation and you're sinking. But the church is so powerful. They've amassed such great wealth now, after all their financial struggles, that they are literally a national world threat. And nobody is daring to molest or make afraid. That is the danger of a false prophet.